Okay, so this book is hard to read, not only because of how it looks, but also because of the content of its character. I have a YouTube. I'm not necessarily a YouTuber. Um, Without further ado, Chapter 5. Their eyes were watching God. On the train the next day, Joe didn't make any speeches with rhymes to her, but he brought her the best things the butcher had, like apples and a glass lantern full of candies. Mostly he talked about plans for the town when he got there. They were bound to need somebody like him. Janie took a lot of looks at him, and she was proud of what she saw. Kind of portly like rich white folks. Strange trains and people and places didn't scare him neither. Where they got off the train at the Maitland, he found a buggy to carry them to look over to the colored town right away. It was early in the afternoon when they got there, so Joe said they must walk over to the place and look around. They locked arms and strolled from end to end of the town. Joe noted the scant dozen of shamefaced houses scattered in the sand and palmetto roots and said, God, they call this a town? Why, it ain't nothing but a raw place in the woods. As a whole heap lighter than I thought, Janie admitted her disappointment. Just like I thought, Joe said. A whole heap of talking, ain't nobody doing nothing. I got, where's the mayor? He asked somebody. I want to speak with the mayor. Two men were sitting on their shoulder blades under a huge live oak tree, almost sat upright at the tone of his voice. They stared at Joe's face, his clothes, and his wife. Where are y'all coming from in such a big haste? Lee Coker asked. Middle Georgie, Starks answered briskly. Joe Starks is my name, from in and through Georgie. And your daughter going to win with us in fellowship? The other reclining figure asked. Mighty glad to have you. Hicks is the name. Governor Amos Hicks from Beaufort, South Carolina. Free, single, disengaged. I got ain't nowhere near old enough to have no daughter. This here's my wife. Hicks sank back and lost interest at once. Where's the mayor? Joe Stark persisted. I want to talk with him. Using might too previous for that, Coker told him. Ain't got none yet. Ain't got no mayor. Well, who tells y'all what to do? Nobody. Everybody's grown. And then again, I reckon us just ain't thought about it. I know I ain't. I did think about it one day, Hicks said dreamily. But then I forgot it. Ain't thought about it since then. No wonder things ain't no better, Joe commented. I'm buying in here. I'm buying in big. Soon we's gonna find a place. We find some place to sleep tonight. Us men folks got to call people together, form a committee. Then we can get things moving around here. I can point you where you can sleep, Hicks offered. Man got his house done built, and his wife ain't come yet. Starks and Janie moved off in the direction indicated, with Hicks and Coker boring into their backs with looks. That man talks like a section foreman, Coker commented. He's mighty compelling. Shucks, said Hicks. My britches just as long as his, but that wife, a his'n. I'm a son of a combustion if I don't go to Georgie and get me one just like her. With what? With my talk, man. It takes money to feed a pretty woman. They get lavish at talk. Uh, not like, not like mine. They love to hear me talk because they can't understand it. My talking is too deep, too much code to it. Oomph. You don't believe me, do you? You don't know that women can get to my command. You ain't never seen me when I'm out pleasuring and giving pleasure. It's a good thing he married before she see me. I can be some trouble when I take a notion. I'm a bitch's baby round lady people. What? I'd much rather see all that than hear about it. Come on, let's go see what he going to do about this town. They got up and sauntered over to where Starks was living for the present. Already the town had found strangers. Joe was on the porch talking to a small group of men, and Janie could be seen through the bedroom window getting settled. Joe had rented the house for a month. The men were all around him, and he was talking to them by asking questions. What is the real name of the place? Some say West Maitland, and some say Eatonville. That's because Captain Eaton give us some land, and along with Mr. Lawrence. But Captain Eaton give us the first piece. How much did they give? Oh, about 50 acres. How much is y'all got now? Oh, about the same. That ain't near enough. Who owns the land joining on to what you got, Captain Eaton? Where is this Captain Eaton? Over there at Maitland, something when he go visiting or something. Let me speak to my wife a minute and I'm gonna see the man. You cannot have no town without some land to build it on. Y'all ain't got enough here to cuss at a cat without getting your mouth full of hair. He ain't got no more land to give away. You need plenty of money if you want any more. I expects to pay him. The idea was funny to them, and they wanted to laugh. They tried to hold it in, but enough in the credulous laughter burst. That's my cat. Out of their eyes and leaked from the corners of their mouths to inform anyone of their thoughts. So Joe walked off abruptly. Most of them went along to show him the way and to be there when his bluff was called. Hicks didn't go far. He turned back to the house as soon as he felt he wouldn't be missed from the crowd and mounted the porch. Evening, Miss Starks. Good evening. You reckon you're going to like around here? I reckon so. Anything I can do to help out. I'm gonna let her out in a second. She is signing me up. Anything I can do to help out. Why you can call on me. Much obliged. There was a long dead pause. Janie was not jumping at her chance like she ought to. Looked like she didn't hardly know he was there. She needed waking up. Folks must be mighty close-mouthed where you come from. That's right, but it must be different at your home. He was a long time thinking, but finally he saw and stumbled down the steps surely. Bye. Goodbye. That Coker asked him about it. Saw ya ducked back to Stark's house. Well, did you make out? Who, me? I ain't been near the place, man. I've been down to the lake trying to catch me a fish. That omen ain't so awfully pretty, no how. When you take that woman ain't so awfully pretty, you know how when you take a second look at her. I had to sort of pass by the house on the way back and seen her good. She ain't nothing to her except that long hair. Oomph. Anyhow, I done took a liking to the man. I wouldn't harm him at all. She ain't half as pretty as a gal I run off with and left up in South Carolina. Hicks, I ought to get mad and say you was lying if I know you're so good. You just talking to consolate yourself by word of mouth. You you got a willing mind, but you's too light behind. A whole heap of men seen the same thing you seen, but they got better sense than you. You ought to know you can't take no woman like that from no man like him. That a man that ups and buys 200 acres of land and one whack and pays cash for it? No, he didn't buy it, show enough. He sure did. Come off with the papers in his pocket. He done called a meeting on his porch tomorrow and ain't seen no such colored man before in all my born days. He going to put up a store and get a post office from the government. That irritated Hicks, and he didn't know why. He was the average mortal. It troubled him to get used to the world one way and then suddenly have it turn different. He wasn't ready to think of colored people in post offices yet. He laughed boisterously. Y'all let that straight darky tell y'all any old lie. A colored man sitting up in a post office? He made an obscene sound. He's liable to do it too, Hicks. I hope so anyhow. Those colored folk is too envious of one another. That's how come us don't get no further than us do. Us talks about the white man keeping us down. Shucks. He don't have to. It's us keeping our own selves down. Now, who said I ain't wanting the man to get a post office? He can be the king of Jerusalem for all I care. And still ain't. Just a second. My cat. Oh, Dios mío. Where was I? Leave the damn phone alone. Muévate. Okay. He could be the king of Jerusalem for all I care. Still ain't. And all ain't no use telling lies. Just a heap of folks don't know no better. Your common sense ought to tell you these white folks ain't going to allow him to run no post office. That we don't know, Hicks. He can, and I believe he know what he's talking about. I reckon if colored folks got their own town, they can have post offices or whatever they please regardless. Then again, I don't expect the white folks way off yonder give a damn. Let's us wait and see. Oh, I'm waiting all right. Expects to keep on waiting till hell freeze over. I'll get reconciled. That woman don't want you. You got to learn that all the women in the world ain't been brought up on no turpentine still. And ain't no mill camp. And no sawmill camp. There's some women that just ain't for you to broach. You can't get her with no fish sandwich. They argued a bit more and then went on to the house where Joe was found, and where Joe was, and found him in his short sleeves, standing with his legs wide apart, asking questions and smoking a cigar. Where's the closest sawmill? He asked Tony Taylor. About 7 miles going towards Acapulco, Tony told him, thinking about building right away. I got yeah, but not the house I expects to live in. That can wait till I make up my mind where wants it located. I figures we all needs to store in a big hurry. A store? Tony shouted in surprise. Yeah, a store right here in town where everything in it you needs. Take a bit of use and everybody proagging over to Midland to buy a little meal and flour when they can get it right here. That would be kind of nice, Brother Starks. Since you mentioned it, of course I would. And then again, a store is good in other ways. That I got to have a place to be at when folks come to buy land. And furthermore, everything is got to have a center and a heart to it. And the town ain't no different from nowhere else. It would be natural for the store to be a meeting place for the town. That show is the truth now. Oh, we'll have this town fixed up terribly. Don't miss being at the meeting tomorrow. Just about time for the committee meeting called to be meeting on his porch the next day. The first wagon load of lumber drove up and Jody went to show them where to put it. Told Janie to hold the committee there until he got back. He didn't want to miss them, but he meant to count every foot of that lumber before it touched the ground. He could have saved his breath, and Janie could have kept right on with what she was doing. In the first place, everybody was late in coming, and then the next thing, as soon as they heard where Jody was, they kept right on up there where the new lumber was rattling off the wagon and piled under the big live oak tree. So that's where the meeting was held, with Tony Taylor acting as chairman and Jody doing all the talking. A day was named for the roads, and they all agreed to bring axes and things like that and chop out 2 roads running each way. That applied to everybody except Tony Coker. They could carpenter, so Jody hired them to go to work on his store bright and soon the next morning. Jody himself could be busy driving around town telling people about Eatonville and drumming up citizens to move there. Janie was astonished to see the money that Jody spent for the land come back to him so fast. 10 new families bought lots and moved in town in 6 weeks. It all looked too big and rushing for her to keep track of. Before the store had a complete roof, Jody had canned goods piled on the floor and was selling so much he didn't have time to go off on his talking tours. She had her first taste of presiding over it the day it was complete and finished. Jody told her to dress up and stand in the store all that evening. Everybody was coming sort of fixed up, and he didn't mean for nobody else's wife to rank with her. She must look on herself as the bell cow, and the other women were the gang. So she put on one of her bought dresses and went up to the new cut road, and all dressed in wine-colored red. Her silken ruffles rustled and muttered about her. The other women had on persgali and calico, with here and there head rag among the older ones. A head rag among the older ones. Nobody was buying anything that night. They didn't come there for that. They came to make a welcome. So Joe knocked in the head of a barrel of soda crackers and cut some cheese. Everybody come right forward and make merry. I got, it's my treat. Jody gave one of his big laughs and stood and stood back. Janie dipped up lemonade like he told her, and a big tin cup full for everybody. Tony Taylor felt so good when it was all gone that he felt to make a speech. Ladies and gentlemen, we are together and gathered here to welcome to our midst one who has seen fit to cast his lot among us. And he didn't just come himself either. He has seen fit to bring his delight of his home, that is his wife, among us also. She couldn't look no more better and no nobler if she was the Queen of England. It's a pleasure for her to be here among us. Brother Starks, we welcome you and all that you have seen fit to bring among us, your beloved wife, your store, your land. A big mouth burst of laughter cut him short. That'll do, Tony. Lige Moss yelled out. Miss Starks Mr. Starks is a smart man. We's all willing to acknowledge that. But the day he come wagging down the road with 200 acres of land over his shoulder, or wants to be there to see it. Another big blow-up laugh. Tony was a little peeved at having the one speech of his lifetime ruined like that. All y'all know what was meant. I don't see how come, 'cause you jump up to make speeches and don't know how, Lige said. I was speaking just all right before you stuck your bill in. No, you wasn't, Tony. You's way out of jurisdiction. You can't welcome a man and his wife talk making comparison about Isaac and Rebecca at the well. Else, it don't show the love between them if you don't. Everybody agreed that was right. It was pitiful for Tony not to know he couldn't make a speech without saying that. Some tittered at his ignorance. So Tony said testily, if all them that's going to cut the monkey is done cut and through with, we'll thank Brother Starks for a response. So Joe Starks took his cigar to the center floor. I thanks you for all your welcome and extending to me the right hand of fellowship. I can see that this town is full of union and love. That means to put up my hands and to pull out of here and strain every nerve that makes this our town and metropolitan a state. So maybe I better tell you, in case you don't know, that if we expect to move on, excuse me, us have got to incorporate like any other town. Us got to incorporate and us got to have a mayor if things want to be done and done right. I welcome you on all the behalf of me and my wife into this store and to other things to come. Amen. Tony led a loud-handed clapping and was out in the center of the floor when it stopped. Brothers and sisters, since us can't never expect to better our choice, I move that we make Brother Starks mayor until we can see further. Second that motion. It was everybody talking at once, so it was no need of putting it to a vote. And now we'll listen to a few words of encouragement from Mrs. Mayor Starks. The burst of applause was cut short by Joe Talk taking the floor himself. Thank you for your compliments, but my wife don't know nothing about no speech making. I never married her for nothing like that. She's a woman and her place is in the home. Janie made her face laugh for a short pause, but it wasn't too easy. She had never thought of making a speech and didn't know if she cared to make one at all. It must have been the way Joe spoke out without giving her a chance to say anything one way or another that took the bloom off of things. But anyway, she went down the road and behind him that night feeling cold He, hey. Sorry. Um, Feeling cold. Ah, she went down the road behind him that night, feeling cold. He strode along, invested with his new dignity, and thought and planned out loud, unconsciousness of her thoughts. The mayor of the town like this can't lay around home too much. The place needs building up, Janie. I'll get a hold of somebody to help out in the store, and you can look after things whilst I drum up some things otherwise. Oh, Jody, I can't do nothing with no store unless you here. I could maybe come in and help you when things get rushed, but I don't see how come you can't. Tain't nothing taller, tain't nothing at all to hinder you. If you got a thimble full of sense, you got to. I got too much else on my hands as mayor. This town needs some light now. This is a little dark right along here. Of course it is. Tain't no use scuffling over these stumps and roots in the dark. I'll call a meeting about the dark and the roots in the dark. And the roots in the dark. I'll call a meeting about the roots right away. I'll sit on this case the first thing. The very next day was money out of his own pocket. He sent off to Sears, Roebuck and Company for the street lamp and told the town to meet the following Thursday night to vote on it. Nobody had ever thought of these street lamps since, and some of them said it was a useless notion. They went so far as to vote against it, but majority would. But the whole town got vain over it after it came. That was because the mayor didn't just take it out of the crate and stick it up on a post. He unwrapped it and he had it wiped off carefully and put it up on a showcase for a week for everybody to see. Then he set a time for the lighting and sent word all around Orange County for one and to all to come to the lamp lighting. He sent men out to the swamp to cut the finest and the straightest cypress posts they could find and kept on sending them back to hunt for another until they found one that pleased him. He talked to the people already about the hospitality of the occasion. Y'all know we can't invite people to our town just dry along, so I got now. We got to feed them something. And tain't nothing people likes better than barbecue. I'll give one whole hog myself. Seem like all the rest of y'all put together ought to be able to scrape up 2 more. Tell your women folks to do round about some pies and cakes and sweet potato pone. That's the way it went too. The women got together the sweets and the men looked after the meats. The day Before the lighting, they dug a big hole in the back of the store and filled it full of oak and burned it down to a glowing bed of coals. It took them a whole night to barbecue 3 hogs. Hambo and Pearson had a full charge while the others helped out with the meat now and then while Hambo swabbed it all over the place. In between times, they told stories and laughed and told more stories and sung songs, and they cut all sorts of capers and whipped the meat slowly as it came to perfection with seasoning penetrating to the bone. The younger boys had to rig up the sawhorses with boards for the women to use tables. And then it was after sunup and everybody not needed when went home to rest up for the feast. By 5 o'clock, the town was full of every kind of vehicle, swarming with people. They wanted to see a lamp lit at dusk. Near the time, Joe assembled everybody in the street before the store made a speech. Folks sees the sun going down. The sunmaker bring it up in the morning, and the sunmaker sends it to bed at night. Us poor weak humans can't do nothing to hurry it up or slow it down. All we can do, if we want any light after setting or before rising, is to make some light for ourselves. So that's how Tom lamps was made. This evening, we's all assembled here to light a lamp. This occasion is something for us to all remember to our dying day. The first street lamp was in a colored town. Lift your eyes and gaze on it. And when I touched the match, that the lamp wick let the light penetrate inside of you and let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Brother Davis, lead us in a word of prayer. Ask a blessing in this town, in a most particular manner. While Davis chanted traditional prayer poem with his own variations, Joe mounted the box that had been placed for the purpose and opened the brazen door of the lamp. As the word Amen was said, he touched the lighted match to the wick. Mr. Bogle's alto burst out in. Walk in the light, the beautiful light. Come where the dewdrops of mercy shine bright. Shine all around us by day and by night. Jesus, light of the world. All the people took it up and sung over and over until it was run dry, and no further invitations of tone or tempo were conceivable. Then they hushed and ate barbecue. When it was all over and that night in bed, Jody asked Janie, "Well, honey, how you like being Miss Mayor?" "Oh, I reckon it's all right, but don't you think it keep us kind of in a strain? Strain? You mean the cooking and waiting on folks? No, Jody. It's just like it keeps us in some way a natural with one another. You's always off talking, fixing things, and I feel like I'm just marking time, hoping it gets over." "Over, Janie? I ain't even get started good. I told you I want in the first beginning that I tend to be a big voice. You ought to be glad, because that makes a big woman out of you." A feeling of coldness and fear took hold of her. She felt far away from things and lonely. Janie soon began to feel the impact and awe of envy against her sensibilities. The wife of the mayor was not just another woman that she had supposed. She slept with authority, and she was part of it in the town mind. So she couldn't get but close to most of them in spirit. It was especially noticeable after Joe forced through the town with a ditch and to drain the street in front of the store. They had murmured haughtily about slavery being over, but every man filled his assignment. There was something about Joe's starch that cowed the town. It was not because of physical fear. He was no fist fighter. His bulk was not even imposing as men go. Neither was it because he was more literate than the rest. Something else made men give way before him. He had a bow down command in his face, and every step he took made the thing more tangible. Take, for instance, that the new house of his had 2 stories with porches and banisters. Of such things, the rest of the town looked like servants' quarters surrounding the big house, and different from everybody else in the town, he was putting off moving in until it had been painted in and out. And look the way he painted it, a goldly, sparkly white, the kind of promenading white of houses of Bishop Whipple, W.B. Jackson, and the Vanderpools wore. It made the village feel funny talking to him, just like he was anybody else. And there was the matter of spittoons. No sooner was he all set as the mayor, postmaster, landlord, storekeeper, and then he bought a desk like Mr. Hill or Mr. Galloway over in the Maitland with one of those swing-around chairs to it. That, what with him biting down on cigars and saving his breath on talk and swinging around in that chair, it weakened people. And then he spit in that gold-looking vase everybody else would have been glad to put on their front room table. It was a spittoon, just like it used to be boss man. His used to be boss man used to have in his bank up there in Atlanta. He didn't have to get up and go to the door every time he had to spit. He didn't spit on the floor neither. He had a golded up spitting pot right and handy, but he went farther than that. He bought a little lady-sized spitting pot for Janie to spit in, had it right in the parlor with little sprigs of flowers painted all on the side. And it took people by surprise because most of the women dipped snuff and of course had a spit up cup in their house. But how could they know up to date folks ain't spitting in flower little things like that? It sort of made the rest of them feel like they had been taken advantage of, and the things had been kept from them. Maybe more things in the world besides spitting pots had been hid from them, and when they wasn't told no better than to spit in tomato cans. It was bad enough for white people, but when one of your own color could be so different, it put you on a wonder. It was like seeing your sister turn into a gator, a familiar strangeness. You keep seeing your own sister and the gator in your sister, and you'd rather not. There was no doubt that the town respected him and admired him in a way. But any man who walks in the way of power and property is bound to meet hate. So when speakers stood up when the occasion demanded and said, "Our beloved mayor," it was one of those statements that everybody says, but nobody actually believes, like God is everywhere. It's just a handle to wind up the tongue with. As time went on and the benefits he had conferred upon and the town receded in time, they sat on his porch while he was busy inside and discussed him. Like one day after he caught Henry Pitts with a wagon load of his ribbon cane and took the cane away from Pitts and made him leave town. Some of them thought Starks ought not have done that. He had so much cane and everything else, but they didn't say that while Starks was on the porch. The mail had come from Maitland, and he was inside to sort it out. Everybody had their say. Sim Jones started off as soon as he was sure that Starks couldn't hear him. It's a sin of shame running that poor man away from here like that. Colored folks that oughtn't be so hard on one another. I don't see it that way at all, Sam Watson said shortly. As other folks learn to work for what they get like everybody else. Nobody ain't stopped Pitts from planting the cane with he wanted to. Starks ain't give him the job. What more he want? I know that too, Jones said. But Sam Starks is true exact with folks. All he got, he done made off of the rest of us. He didn't have all that when he come here. Yeah, but none all this you see and you see setting on wasn't here neither when he come. Give the devil his due. But now, Sam, you know that all he do is big belly around and tell other folks what to do. He loves obedience out of everybody under the sound of his voice. You can feel a switch in his hand, and when he's talking to you, Oscar Scott Company. That's my phone. Come on. You can feel a switch in his hand when he's talking to you. Oscar Scott complained. That chasing feeling he told sort of gives you the proprieties, the protolapis, the culinary lining. He's a whirlwind among breezes, Jeff Bruce threw in. Speaking of the winds, he the wind and we's the grass. We bend every which way he blows. Sam Watson agreed, but at that us needs him. The town wouldn't be nothing if it wasn't for him. He can't help but being sort of bossy. Some folks need thrones and ruling chairs and crowns to make their influence felt. He don't. He got a throne in the seat of his pants. What I don't like about the man is he talks unlettered with folks, with books in his jaws. Hicks complained, showing off his learning. To look at me, and you wouldn't think it, but I got a brother pastoring up around Ocala that got good learning. If he was here, Joe Starks wouldn't make no fool out of him like he do the rest of y'all. I often wonder how that little wife of his makes out with him, 'cause he's a man that changes everything, but nothing don't change him. Many's the time I done thought about that myself. He gets her every now and then, and she make little mistakes around the store. What make her keep her head tied up like some old woman around the store? Nobody couldn't get me to tie no rag on my head if I had hair like that. Maybe he make her do it. Maybe he's scared some of the rest of us men might touch it around that store. It sure is hidden mystery to me. She sure don't talk much. The way he rears and pitches the store, sometimes she make a mistake and is sort of ungodly, but she don't seem to mind at all. I reckon they understand one another. The town had a basketful of feelings, good and bad, about Joe's positions and possessions, but none had the temerity to challenge him. They bowed down to him rather because he was, of all things, and then again, he was all of the things because the town bowed down. This book is hard too. It's not easy to read.